Hello everybody and welcome to another day of live at the Waterhole. It's a lovely sunny day in comparison to yesterday here at Tembe Elephant Park in Maputo land. My name is Taylor McCurdy and I will be the voice that you'll be hearing for the next 2 hours. And this is a live and interactive show. In case it is your first time watching, you can ask me a whole host of questions. All you have to do is head over to X or Twitter, use the hashtag WildEarth at the end of your question. Otherwise, if you're watching on YouTube, then you are welcome to comment away on the live chat. But I'll just wait just a couple of moments until a few of you have jumped on board and said hello so that I know I won't be talking to myself this morning. Lots and lots of elephant bulls, as we typically see, since the downpour in the eastern parts of the country definitely made a huge difference and brought joy to a lot of these animals. Doesn't look like there's too many birds around just yet, but we will have a closer look. I think it might be one warthog at the back. I could be mistaken. Maybe it's an antelope. And then just a couple of elephants. But as the day goes on, I have no doubt that more and more wildlife will come on down to have a drink. It's crazy how just yesterday the temperatures were quite cool across South Africa, and all of a sudden it's hot. I mean, I think Hoedspruit yesterday, this is where I am, so much further to the north and west of South Africa in comparison to where Tembe Elephant Park is. And I think the temperature has increased by about 10 degrees Celsius, which is quite impressive. It's always a bit of a shock to the system, these up and down temperatures. But luckily, the animals, especially the elephants, have got a great way to be able to deal with cooling down. And that's just what we're watching them do at the moment. I always have a chuckle, though, when I'm at Tembe Elephant Park with all these little wallows that are formed, so these natural depressions. Well, elephants and other animals have kind of dug them out and they're filled up with water, and they always choose the smallest pools of water rather than the bigger stuff at the distance. But that's of course for a very important reason. As most of you know, elephants prefer to drink clean water, so if they're for the most part going to go and drink and quench their thirst, they'll do so in that bigger body of water where it won't be as stagnant. And then when they want to cover themselves with a nice muddy substance, that will definitely help stay on their bodies for a bit longer than just water. They'll do so here in these little wallows, and they'll keep excavating them with their feet and sometimes using their tusks, and that's how they get bigger and bigger. And who knows, this might all fill up and form one big wallow. But for those of you that don't know, every single year on the 22nd of March since 1993, we all come together to celebrate this vital resource that sustains our planet. Can you guess what that resource is? I'm sure you're all shouting now, water! But it's not just about a celebration, of course. It's about recognizing the critical importance of water conservation and adequate access to water, clean water specifically, for all. And that's why I have a guest joining me today, which is exciting. I've got Lauren van Niekerk from Wild Trust for the next hour, and she'll be chatting about all things water. So welcome, Lauren. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. Sorry, everybody, we're just waiting for Lauren to jump on board. She was here just a moment ago, but sometimes, and I've done this many times, where I forget to unmute myself. Okay, I think There are obviously some technical difficulties, so we'll wait for things to rectify themselves, and I'll just carry on doing what I normally do. At least we've got the elephants to keep us company. And you can see they're all doing something different. Each have their own plan for the day. Some of them look like they're just having a bit of a break, having a siesta. Although these chaps that are standing out here closest to us, that aren't moving their trunks around at all very much, need to get the job done. Cover yourself with mud and then move. And then kind of move on to maybe where that elephant is standing in the shade. That's a much better spot to have a siesta. And you can see that one every now and then right at the back, just tossing dust up towards its face, which we see elephants doing quite often. You can imagine with all the mucus around their eyes, and I suppose just the moisture as well around their trunks and their mouths, they get pestered by flies and all sorts of other flying creatures. So by adding a layer of dust, that's wonderful. It will help keep those flies at bay. Still be quite annoying though. And then, this is interesting, this elephant on the left-hand side, we can see he's got horn ears, both of them though. So maybe we can have a zoom in, and when he flaps them, we should be able to see it a bit better. I'm just having a quick look at the YouTube chat, and while the tech team gets everything sorted so that Lauren can join us properly. Jive Bunny, hello, and Grace, you've joined today. Joan, good to see you again, Joan. And then we've got Ants. Ants, I like that you said hello, pachyderms. That's a great way to greet the elephants. And then Luang, you've also joined, which is great. Everyone just saying hello. And then we've got a couple of newbies. Well, I say newbies, I just have your names don't seem familiar. And it's quite funny. I have I've been able to remember some of you, especially because you all ask the same question. Not all ask the same questions, you all ask questions. There we go. And then Ants, you said, are these real or is it animatronics? Well, your guess is as good as mine. No, now that we've got a much closer view of the elephants, you can definitely see that they are real. Definitely better in real life than if you're on the Disney ride in, well, another part of the world. But I was just mentioning about this elephant, this young bull on the left-hand side with a very interesting tears in its ears. Do you see that? That is fascinating. I just want to wait to see. Can you open both of them again? Because it's so unusual to have, like, they almost look identical, don't they? Okay, well, we have to wait for the right ear to flap open a little bit more. Okay, I think that Lauren is now here, and we'll be able to chat to us. Sorry, Lauren, I'm not going to do the big intro again, but I basically said something along the lines of why it is important that we celebrate World Water Day, and that I was very excited to have you here, and we can't wait to hear all about Wild Trust and the projects, or ongoing projects that you're doing. So yeah, welcome, Lauren. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can all hear you loud and clear.
Excellent, excellent. So, I thought I was just sitting and learning about all these wonderful things that come to the Waterhole, but
I could
but
definitely tell you a thing or two.
so I'm hoping we can do that once I've spoken a little bit. But essentially, we are an environmental NGO. We are based in Durban in KwaZulu-Natal, and sure, we do a range of work. We're mainly known for our terrestrial work. We've had a few identity crises over the years. So we do confuse people a lot because we used to be the Wildlands Conservation Trust, and then we changed to Wildlands, and then we changed to Wild Trust. And then we got a new ocean program 6 years ago, and that is called Wild Oceans. But in a nutshell, as we sit here today, we are the Wild Trust. Wildtrust.coza is our website, and we have two main programs. Obviously, one that focuses on terrestrial conservation, called Wildlands, and Wild Oceans that focuses on marine conservation. We have around 10 to 20 projects sitting in each of those programs. Admittedly, when I was approached to chat to you guys, I was like, oh my goodness, guys, I worked on terrestrial stuff for a very long time, but I have become an ocean girl of late, and over the last 6 years, that really has become my focus. And then they said it was fine if I joined you guys as long as I could differentiate an Ellie and a humpback whale, you know. So so that's why I'm here. But I look after campaigns and communications. So I'm more on the advocacy and awareness side. And I did do a lot of work actually on rhinos and campaigning for rhinos, which I was hoping we could chat a bit about, actually, because I feel like that had its time where everybody was speaking about it and everybody was throwing money at that problem. And it's kind of dissipated now, and people have kind of become numb to the crisis, which is still very much ongoing. So my earlier work used to focus on campaigning for terrestrial animals like our critically endangered rhinos. But now I focus very much on the marine side of conservation, and as an organization, we don't focus purely on the environment. We also very, very focused on creating social, ecological resilience in mainly rural areas. We have massive projects within the Isimangaliso Wetland Park area, as well as the Utigela area here in KZN. And we also do capacity building and knowledge building, research. I'm surrounded by scientists for most of my days, for my sins. As a communicator and a creative, we have some interesting conversations, but they are the brains, and we're very grateful for all that they can offer for us to communicate. So, yeah, that's pretty much me.
Well, that's really exciting. And I think it's not always a bad thing to have your finger in lots of different pies, advocating, for all animals, whether they be right at the bottom of the ocean floor, or as you say, big mega herbivores that roam the land. So we're very excited to obviously delve into some of these topics. So I'm quite interested. I mean, obviously, I love that you said that Wild Trust has kind of had an identity crisis. Sorry, I can't English on the best of days.
Identity crisis, yeah.
There we go, that one, which is really interesting. None of us would have even guessed that. But I do love that you've got the two different projects. Do they ever overlap? Do the teams from
Yes.
the Wild Oceans and Wild Lands ever have to work together, especially being on the East Coast, where you find that these natural environments pretty much cross ecosystems, if you will?
Yes, absolutely. So the two projects that I mentioned earlier, the Isimangaliso MPA project and the one based at the Utugela MPA, which stands for Marine Protected Area, so basically like game reserves in the ocean. Those two projects have a very strong terrestrial element linked to removing alien invasive plants and rehabilitation and restoration work with indigenous trees. We also have a really nice model that actually started our organization that is in partnership with community members who actually grow trees. We call them treepreneurs, and they grow trees. And when those trees reach a certain height, all indigenous, from seedlings, mainly in Coke bottles, and we buy them from those treepreneurs. We barter them most of the time because we did find that cash wasn't always the best tool to hand over. So we kind of barter with things like hippo rollers, which are like mini Jojo tanks, sometimes bicycles, sometimes grocery vouchers. Sometimes we pay school fees for some of our treepreneurs' children, etc., etc. So, and then those trees are used to restore degraded areas. So there is absolutely an overlap. I've also been involved recently with working very closely with government. I don't know, I'm sure you're aware of the 30 by 30 global target. But essentially it's a global target that our country committed to. And within the global biodiversity framework, to protect 30% of land and sea globally by 2030, which we all know is around the corner. But I have been very involved in the communications subgroup, kind of engaging government and civil society and other NGOs around how we best communicate about 30 by 30. And what's really nice is that's where the crossover and the knowledge really comes in handy, and recognizing that it needs to happen both on land and in sea, and understanding all the species and habitats that need to be protected. And the reasons why. So the two projects, the Isimangaliso project and the Utugela project that I mentioned earlier, those are actually ecosystem-based adaptation projects that obviously try and make communities more resilient to the impacts of climate change. So making sure that all the coastal ecosystems are restored and healthy and thriving, and therefore they absorb some of the impact that might come from major storms, floods, and be able to also mitigate against the impacts of things like droughts that are definitely coming, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for elaborating a bit more on those two projects and all the work that is going to be done. I sadly have not spent too much time on the east coast of South Africa and in the game reserves and wilderness areas that you have mentioned. Is there anything or anywhere that you would recommend that people could go to be able to support these projects that you've mentioned, but also maybe be able to get involved? Is that something that is available for the public?
Yes. So, I mean, KZN has the best game reserves, guys. So Louis Mfolozi is amazing. Mkuzi Game Reserve is amazing. Tanda Game Reserve, amazing. But Isimangaliso Wetland Park, I mean, in itself, it's not a World Heritage Site for nothing. There is so much to be seen. Unfortunately, turtle season has just come to an end. But I think it starts up again in October, and you can go to the Isimangaliso Wetland Park and go on a turtle tour. It is a bucket list thing that everybody has to do. And you basically go and see loggerheads and leatherback turtles. So loggerheads are endangered, and leatherbacks are critically endangered species. And those turtles are truly, truly fascinating in that they come back to the exact same spot that they were born every year to go and lay their eggs. And you get to watch them partake in that process. They come up the beach late at night, and they dig a hole. Sometimes they spend hours just digging the most perfect little home and nest for their eggs. And then they lay eggs. And around 200 eggs, truly amazing. And then they cover them up, and watching the whole process is truly fascinating, because they cover up their eggs, and then when they go back into the ocean, you would have never known that they were there. Other than footprints, you see the footprints kind of going up, and then they disappear. They basically mush and mess the sand, so you can't actually see where they've dug their nest, in order to protect their nest and those eggs from any potential predators. So truly fascinating process, bucket list stuff that everybody has to go and see at some point in your life in Isimangaliso. And then obviously game reserves everywhere. Whale watching, oh my goodness. We have a humpback whale migration that comes past our coastline every year of around 30,000 humpback whales. So that's a sight to behold. There's certainly so many special places to visit. In terms of supporting our projects, we have helped create, together with the community and together with Izimvelo KZN Wildlife and together with the Isimangaliso Wetland Park Authority, we've created what we call community resource hubs. There are 3 of them, one in an area called Kodapa, that's near Banganek, another one in Kovakeni, and another one in Mabibi. And those are all rural communities, and we've created these beautiful spaces where people can go and learn about the ocean. There's a little library, there's computers for people to access internet, to send CVs, to apply for jobs, to come together on weekends. There's lots of kids clubs and things, to sing, to dance, to learn about all things ocean. That is essentially right on their doorstep. Access has been historically been an issue in our country, and it's just wonderful to be able to create these spaces where they have access to everything, including the potential to learn how to swim and potentially snorkel and see some of the amazing creatures that they learn about in the ocean itself.
Wow. Those are some amazing opportunities, which is really great. I hope that more people will follow in suit, whether it's on the ocean side or in mainland South Africa. But what we're going to do now is we're just going to take a moment to listen to the sounds of this elephant as it splashes itself with mud. Right. Wasn't that beautiful just to take a moment to listen to nature? We're now at Juma Private Game Reserve, which is in the heart of the Sabi Sand. And Lauren, there might be some people that will argue against you about in KZN being better than the Sabi Sand. But I believe you have a question for me.
Oh, I was just wondering. Oh, there's some lions, guys.
There are lions just hiding in the shade.
Oh, now we're talking.
It should be
We
quite
love
an
a
interesting
lion.
encounter now. We'll see if the elephants pick up on them, and see if there's maybe going to be a reaction, or if these lions are going to just hide in the thickets, which seems like the smarter idea.
Beautiful. So I don't know how much you know about the canned hunting and captive breeding industry, but there's been some good strides for that, hopefully being phased out soon.
I follow as much as I can, but it's a topic that I regularly speak about. But it's always good to hear everyone else's opinion, because I know everyone watching is probably tired of hearing the sound of my voice and enjoying the fact that I have a guest today. So yeah, I'd absolutely love to hear more about it. But before we get onto that, I just want to point out, you see the herd of elephants, and they definitely have picked up on the lions, and I think that's why you saw them walk in that direction, getting a better scent of them. And most of them have moved off, but there might be, I didn't see how many actually moved off, but there should be 3 of them here. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because the elephants kind of walk the same route every single time they come to the dams, and then disappear off. They love the shades of these big jackalberry trees that they're standing at the moment. But I think that they've had enough of the lions and not willing to chase them. So maybe no action for us. But sorry, Lauren, please tell us a little bit more about what's happening with the canned hunting, and I suppose the illegal breeding of big cats.
So, there's an Ellie that's chasing.
Go get him.
Yeah, go get that lion. You let him know who's boss.
Exactly.
Or her.
No, I think your sexing was spot on there. It's definitely a young boy. Too inquisitive. Might get a bit of a shock just now.
Oh, this is too exciting. I don't want to talk over this. Anyway, so a few years ago, I was involved in a campaign called Blood Lions, and the creation of a film that helped expose the captive breeding and canned hunting industry. And it was a bit of a heartbreaking journey to go on to learn the reality. But some would argue that, wild lions are endangered, that there's more, that there are more captive bred lions and big cats in captivity than there are in the wild, which is a very heartbreaking statistic. But what I find in my everyday life, what is that in the tree? Is there something in the tree, or is that just the light?
I'm having a look. I mean, these trees are also perfect spots for leopards to be resting up in them, and we see leopards around here all the time.
Oh my
But
word!
the zoomies that are controlling the camera are phenomenal at spotting animals. I feel like it's their part-time job, which is so impressive. I mean, that could be anything in there. In the shade, kind of looks like a shape, but I don't think it is. But it's always important just to have a double look.
Have a squiz.
Exactly. So sorry, yes, you were telling us more about the Blood Lions project. Also, it's amazing for those of you that haven't watched the Blood Lions film. You need to go and check it out. It's definitely an eye-opening documentary to watch.
So obviously, also just in my everyday life, I find that I come across people that are just just completely uninformed in terms of this industry and how awful it is, and how people are oblivious to the fact that they're sometimes supporting it. So so in terms of where it starts, they start off by giving tourists an opportunity to hold and pet lion cubs. And they make money off of that. You know, everybody loves a selfie with a lion or a cheetah or a big cat. So they make money off that. And then obviously during our research, we discovered that they also, what they do is they take the cubs away from their mother prematurely, so that she goes into something called oestrus, and then she can mate again and make more babies, because babies equal money for these facilities. So they make money off the babies. Then when they get a bit bigger and harder to handle, then they it's the walk with lions is another opportunity to make money. And they train them to walk with people, alongside people on a trail. And then when they get very much bigger, what is that?
I think it might be a lion just sitting there. Looks like it.
So cool.
Something. Definitely something, unless it's a Logosaurus. It could also be. I'm very good at
Logosauruses all the time.
Well, I'm so glad we're in the same boat. It makes me feel a little bit better about myself.
And then also when you said there's normally leopards here, I got very excited, because I'm the person that goes to Kruger for like 5 days and doesn't see one leopard. And then I get home and then I see Kruger sightings, social media, and there's just like leopards for days, and baby leopards, and like, yeah.
Don't worry. Again, we should not go on a safari together then, because I'm also the absolute worst at finding a leopard. It drives me crazy. I haven't seen a leopard cub, but I count myself pretty lucky. I spend a lot of time in the bush, but I haven't seen one in ages. I can, in fact, at least probably a bit more than a year was the last time that I saw a really young leopard cub. So I can recommend some other people if you ever want to go to Kruger with
Oh, yes.
Not me.
Let's do that. Let's DM after this call, please.
There we go. Exactly. So Lauren, it's so interesting, and it's really just obviously nice to hear more people, like-minded people talking about this, because sadly most of the world is they just have, like you say, they've just got no knowledge about what conservation efforts they are supporting. And there unfortunately are so many organizations out there that look so pretty on paper and make it seem like every cent is going to where it's supposed to, or, pulling the wool over people's eyes that it is normal to walk with or to cuddle them. And in my personal opinion, and everybody knows this, I'm very vocal about it. I get a lot of, we want to go and volunteer. Where should I go and volunteer? And my answer for the most part is nowhere where you can cuddle, pet, or walk with a big cat of any kind. So, having a documentary like Bloodlines come out and be shown to the world, I think was a real eye opener. And have there been, since the film, again, I just want to make sure, so I'll ask the source, what sort of movements and laws have come into place after that was released in terms of the banning of big cat breeding?
So there hasn't been anything official as yet, unfortunately, but I think the biggest shift has been that there is collaboration and conversations and roundtable discussions being had at a very, very high government level around the policy changing and what that looks like. Obviously, it starts to get super tricky, and there's welfare issues involved. What do you do with 9,000 captive bred big cats? What do you do with them? They've been brought up in captivity. You cannot rewild them. You cannot rewild a predator. it is very, especially a lion. Some people argue that cheetah are it is possible to rewild, etc. I've got my own personal opinions on that, but
I
lions
think we're on the same
specifically
page.
cannot. Yeah, they cannot be rewilded. So what do you do with 9,000 lions that have been brought up getting their food from a human being, feeding them in a cage? It's just
Yeah.
it's quite heartbreaking. Um, but what should upset people even more is that lions naturally, you probably know the exact figure, but they need a whole lot of space to survive and thrive. They need space, and most of these lions are sitting in 1 meter by 1 meter cages. It's horrendous. And then when they get too big, so I was going through kind of the life cycle. So you make money off them when you're cuddling them. You make money. These are the facilities that do it. You make money off them when you're walking with them. And then you make money off them when you basically sell them. So you can sell them like a handbag online, guys, if you want to hunt a lion. And obviously there's also another, this is like a whole nother show, ethical versus unethical hunting. That would be a whole nother talk show in itself. But often these hunts are unethical. And remember, the people coming to hurt this animal is the same. Is a human that has been giving them food and looking after them their entire lives. Like, it really is. It's quite depressing. Maybe I should just stop talking about it now. But as a positive, like a call to action, just my 2 cents. You hit the nail on the head earlier, Taylor. But if you go to a facility and they allow any kind of interaction with cats, with big cats, if they trade in their animals, so if they are selling their animals, and if they breed their animals. So if they trade, if they breed, if they allow interaction, turn around and walk out.
Yeah, I agree.
Is my advice to you.
I completely agree. I'm very much for the rehab or rehabilitation to release and reintroduce into the wild. And if that cannot be done, well, like you said, that's a whole nother topic that can get quite political. But seeing as though the lions have now disappeared into the shade of the trees, we're going to head over to Oldonyo, and hopefully some giraffe are just waiting around for us.
Taylor, what are those birds called that eat all the little ticks off the giraffe?
Lauren, those are called oxpeckers. So we have lots and lots of different not lots of different oxpecker species. We've got 2 oxpecker species. But for the most part, we see red-billed oxpeckers here. We'll see. Hopefully we can get a closer look. Also yellow-billed oxpeckers. And these giraffes are pretty much here all day long at Old Donyo in Kenya. And this is actually my favorite waterhole because there's just always action here. And when the big animals aren't around, there are butterflies. We did so much birding here yesterday. And there's a couple of reptiles, and mainly one of the agama species runs around and catches all the flying insects. Let's just have a look at which oxpecker species we've got here. It's always a little bit tricky to tell. I think it looks like there's 1 or 2 juveniles as well, because they don't have the coloration on them. Let's see. Come out into the sun. There we go. We got a much closer view, so you can see that one closest to us looks quite dark in coloration, doesn't really have a prominent eye ring unless it's just a shade, and doesn't seem to have much color on its beak. But then there is an adult that's sitting up, sifting through the mane. Can you see that? And it's got a bright red beak. So these are red-billed oxpeckers, and the youngsters learning how to use their beaks, really.
And Taylor, remind me how you tell the difference between a male and female. Doesn't it have something to do with those things on their heads?
With a giraffe.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll have to just zoom out a little bit so you can see. So for those of you that have just joined us for the first time, remember this is a live and interactive show, and we're so happy to have you all on board so you can ask myself and Lauren questions. And Lauren is from Wild Trust, and we are celebrating World Water Day, which is on the 22nd of March. And Lauren's just asked a question with regards to how do you sex giraffe? How do you tell male from female? Well, we've got a perfect example right now because we've got a male giraffe on the left and a female on the right. And because giraffe are so tall, quite often you only see the tops of their heads. We use those bony protrusions coming out of their heads, so they're not horns. We call these ossicones. So it's actually bone that is fused to the skull, whereas a horn normally has a hard keratin coating on it. So if you look on the left, you'll see that the male's ossicones are much wider, and also the top of those ossicones don't have as much fluff, as much hair. So that's one way. So we often say that it almost looks like it's bald on top, where the females typically have hair covering the tips of their ossicones, and sometimes they can have these big, long tufts. But of course, when they're younger, it's always good to just check for the bump under the belly. And that's another good way to tell if it's a male or female if you're not entirely sure. And then I've got some questions as well coming through from some of the viewers, but I'll ask them all in just a moment. And then we've got Bundu Bash, who said that Old Donyo is also your favorite waterhole and you love the camera angle. Yeah, it's quite spectacular. I mean, you can imagine being in this in the hide that is here and trying to photograph these giraffe. You'll definitely need a wide angle lens. A big zoom lens won't do you any good unless you're wanting to photograph the finer details, like, you know, maybe the wrinkles around the knees of the giraffe, or perhaps even a tick. There's not much distance between the waterhole and the camera itself. So, Lauren, have you heard much about the flooding that's going on in Kenya at the moment?
I have not.
So it's really interesting. At this time of the year, normally January, February, going into March, it's the kind of a short dry season. So Kenya has 2 rainy seasons. The short rains in November and December, and then it's because it's just so hot. A lot of the water evaporates and the grass becomes quite dry. And then they have the long range, which can start at the end of March and then extend all the way through April and into May. But Kenya, for the last few months, has had excessive rainfall, and there hasn't been a dry season. So, which is amazing for wildlife, because Kenya has been, unfortunately, in a terrible drought for a couple of years. So there's just so much water around at the moment that we're not seeing as much action as we typically do. But I definitely recommend, Lauren, when you're having one of those stressful days at work, during our winter, I suppose it's the same in Kenya, to have a look at this camera itself, because sometimes you'll see, 10 really big elephants with enormous tusks, giraffe, oryx and eland and everything else in between, all fighting over this sort of pumped borehole that we're looking at the moment.
Amazing.
Okay, I'm just looking for some questions here. Lauren Pricky says that she would just like to thank you so much for all the conservation information that you have been sharing, and that she also agrees, and she feels that it should be talked about, especially the big cat trade, and what's ethical and what's not. So that's just one of the perks of course, WildEarth, and especially this show live at the Waterhole that reaches so many different people, that we do have the opportunity to pass on this information, and so that people can, I suppose, be more aware and informed and make the right decisions. And then Reels Greens, Lauren has asked, where can people go and read more about the projects that Wild Trust is involved in?
So they can definitely go on our website, wildtrust.co.za. But I would also urge you to find us on social media. We are on Instagram, X, and Facebook. But this is where the identity crisis comes in. So we have 2 platforms, one for each of our key programs. So we're Wildlands SA and Wild Oceans SA on social media. And if you go and find us there, we post pretty much daily updates on all the work that we're doing, and also how people can get involved. The call to action is very important to our organization, because if people know better, they do better, right? So so please go and follow us, and we'll keep you up to date with all the happenings, and we'll also let you know when you can get involved, like when we do beach cleanups or anything along those lines.
I just realized that I was talking and had myself muted. That was fun. Let me try this again. What I was going to say is that I basically said that I'm very excited to now follow the future and all the projects that are going to be going ahead. So I hope you all do too. But I'll do that after the show, of course. You can see something has caught the attention of this giraffe, and even the oxpeckers are alarming. But it might just be that the oxpeckers have seen some people that are moving around. But where I was going to go with this is that I'm a huge advocate for citizen science, as unfortunately I don't have millions of rands to donate to various organizations. So I try and always use my social media platforms to, I suppose, to highlight some great projects that are doing good work. And I believe that you have a citizen science project with the whales. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I'm so curious.
Sure. So first of all, citizen science is tricky, because, it is asking people to take quite a few steps and use a good chunk of their time to kind of help contribute to databases. But what we do is, so whales have, just like we have fingerprints that differentiate us apart, they have similar patterns like we do fingerprints that differentiate them on their tails, on their tail fluke. And so what we've done is that we've asked people if they see whales, if they're doing some sort of whale watching and they're taking photos or taking videos, that they send those to us. We have a website where people can upload that. It's called whaletime.coza. And and people can upload pictures there, and then it gets plugged into a database, so we can start keeping track of how many whales are actually migrating along our coastline here on the East Coast.
That is amazing. It's like I said, sadly, I don't spend much time on the coast anymore, so it's really difficult for me to get involved in these projects. But a lot of the viewers in South Africa are actually from KwaZulu-Natal. So for those of you that don't get seasick, keep your cameras handy, and in the next couple of months, because they're not going to quite be here just yet, but when they do start arriving, definitely head over to, you said it was www.whaletime.co.za, if I'm correct.
Correct.
And even if you aren't able to, just maybe go and have a look, and perhaps you can even get involved in some local projects at home. I know up here in the Greater Kruger, obviously there's huge leopard projects, not even just in the Kruger, but all over the world. The Southern Ground Hornbill projects definitely want people to photograph and send locations of where certain birds were found. And I suppose the list is endless. So if you've got a camera, get involved, find out what the requirements are, and your information will be invaluable. Now you can see the big dark clouds forming in the distance, ready for another thunderstorm, I'm sure. Some big clouds that are climbing vertically just right at the back. And I've been waiting to be able to host live at the Waterhole while a big thunderstorm is going on. Maybe today will be the day. But it's not looking too threatening just yet. Have you ever been to East Africa, Lauren?
I have not.
Any plans?
It needs to happen soon, though. You're whetting my appetite.
You'll have to go. I know it's getting a lot easier for South Africans to travel to East Africa. Definitely on the affordability side of it. For those of you that don't know, us living in South Africa, a lot of us are really passionate about just being outside, but we tend to be restricted to just South Africa. Because traveling outside of the country can be quite expensive, because the rest of Africa, for the most part, uses US dollar, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the exchange rate, so it doesn't work. But I think with the connections with Kenya and South Africa going forward, it'll be a lot more affordable. So you've got to go and visit. I haven't actually been to Oldonyo, which is, I always say, it's sandwiched between Amboseli and Tsavo National Park, and it's an area that I'm itching to get up to. Especially during the dry season. It would be amazing, but green season is also fantastic to go when you get those really amazing contrasting colors with Mount Kilimanjaro in the background, especially if you're in Amboseli. And actually sometimes, Lauren, from here we can see Mount Kilimanjaro, but with all the cloud cover, basically directly behind that flat top tree. It's an acacia species. That's where we typically see it, but only on the clearest of clear days. Okay, well, we're going to head to Olifants and check out what's happening back in South Africa, seeing as though it's so quiet. No, we might not be. I think the camera might be frozen, which is a pity, because it's such a great view of the Olifants River. Sorry about that, everybody. We will have to try again. I'm sure the tech wizards will be on it. Okay. One last question. And this is an interesting one, Lauren. I've had this conversation quite a few times with the viewers, but it'll be great to hear your perspective. Again, everybody, it's good to do your own research and form your own opinion. So please don't come at us. But Diane from the UK has said, what do you think of zoos that claim to be a part of conservation projects? Can these animals really be released? Now, Diane, this is not a touchy subject, not at all, because I talk about it quite often, but I'm really excited to hear what Lauren has to say.
putting me in the hot seat here. So, it's very hard to say. I'm going to share my personal opinion, because obviously the opinions within our organization are diverse. I do feel like there are, as mentioned earlier, there are certain species that can be successfully rewilded, even if they are brought up in captivity.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there are a lot that cannot. And therefore, it is hard, and also highly intelligent species that should be out, like also in the beautiful ocean, like captive dolphins, for example, that are super intelligent and are stuck in a cage or in a tank. And it really just kills me. I do feel like there is an educational element that those facilities often offer. If you think about South Africa, for example, there are a lot of people that can't afford to get access into Kruger National Park and appreciate wildlife that way. So being able to go into a facility of some kind and appreciate and learn and become aware about species, that is a positive. But the frustration for me is that there's so many other ways. Like, I feel like these days with series like Blue Planet and just beautiful films that and documentaries that capture wildlife. I would much rather people educated themselves online with that sort of content, or through watching TV or film through that content, as opposed to supporting facilities that are putting animals in cages and rather than in the wild. I really just believe that all animals belong in the wild. And yeah, that's just, for me, that's just in an ideal world. Like I said, I do feel like there is a slight positive in that they're educating and making people aware, but and especially on issues such as pollution and what am I doing as a consumer? If am I using too much single-use plastic? Should I be saying no to straws, etc., etc. Like, those sorts of educational things are really valuable, but I would much rather the platforms used for those didn't involve animals in captivity.
Absolutely. And I suppose that's where Wild Trust comes in, affording people from communities that wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to view these animals in the wild, and providing them with that, whether it's potentially seeing turtles nesting, or even visiting Mfolozi, or what, one of those
Exactly.
natural wonders, which is really great. So these social development projects are fantastic, and that's really where you need to be donating, because let's be honest, the children, as we all, and I'm sure we all agree, they are the future, and those are the mindsets that we need to change. But Lauren, thank you so much for joining me on Live at the Waterhole. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you, and yeah, thank you for imparting all your wonderful information to us. I know there have been lots of questions that I haven't even been able to get to from all the viewers, but if you do have any more questions, head on over to Wild Trust and have a look at wildlands and wild oceans and see how you can get involved. So thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank you. I'm sorry I chased the lions away.
No, not at all. That was definitely on the elephants this time. Right, everyone. How cool. How interesting. We're going to be having guests tomorrow and the day after that, chatting about the importance of water and just other projects that sort of go along, and that will be for the first hour of live at the Waterhole show, which is awesome. So Diane from the UK, I just want to quickly wrap up. I think you've probably heard me say this before, just in terms of zoos, they definitely have a place for sure. And the example that I always like to give is how they're fantastic at preserving genetics, which is pretty amazing. And if you follow the northern white rhino story and how people are, or humans, obviously humans, are trying to bring back the species, it wouldn't have been possible if the rhinos that were brought in that were in the Czech Republic, that were kept in zoos. Without them, we wouldn't have the northern white rhino anymore. So there's definitely pros and there's definitely cons, and I have no doubt that every single one of you watching would prefer to see wildlife roaming out in the wild where they belong. But it's really a catch-22 situation. Yeah, looking forward. I'm probably going to go back and check out some of the questions, and maybe I'll be able to answer them. But things have quietened down now at Juma. What we're going to do is we're going to head back over to Old Donyo in Kenya. Well, it's just amazing. Like I said, the animals come and go, and they've definitely made a return. It's like they've multiplied now. All the giraffe and the host of birds that follow them. And then there was a question earlier from Mina, and I don't know if you noticed, there was a giraffe that when we were first at Old Donyo that was standing in the water, and Mina, he had asked if that giraffe was cooling her hooves down. Maybe. That must be quite nice to feel how cool it is. And they obviously don't have that much sensation in their their hooves. Obviously, it's not quite our fingernails, if you will, but it's a similar. It's similar, just a different, I suppose, form of keratin in comparison to what we are used to. Sure, and then I just want to quickly address something. Sorry, everybody. Where I live is literally right near the Air Force Base, so a big helicopter just zoomed down and was so low that all the tops of the trees all blew around quite a bit. But I see, Della, you're a little bit angry, and you just said that what can be done in all the war-torn countries? Are the animals just left to rot? So no, not at all. I mean, in Africa, there's amazing projects that are going on to restore these areas, whether it was a civil war, guerrilla warfare, whatever you want to call it, or whatever kind of, tension is going on within these areas. There are big conservation organizations that are going in and trying their absolute best to restore the wilderness areas. But unfortunately, it doesn't, you can't just snap your fingers and then all of a sudden all the problems are fixed. So it takes a lot of work. And in fact, it will take years and years and years to be able to rectify it. I mean, it starts off with, you've got to get boots on the ground. You've got to get people there trying to clean up the snaring. So for those of you that don't know what snaring is, that's when people will set traps for animals made from wire, sometimes even steel cabling, depending on what animals they're hoping to catch. And it's basically like a big noose, if you will. So an animal goes through it and it just tightens and tightens. And a lot of the time it's for meat or skin or, it could be for all sorts of things. I mean, there's a lot of traditional medicine around many different body parts of animals. So, they've got to stop that. Then they've obviously got to try and put an end to as much of the poaching as possible, whether it's people coming in and also shooting animals. And this takes time. And then you've got to get the scientists involved when it's safe enough. They've got to set up camera traps so that they can have an idea of what animals are actually occurring in the area, what's left, what needs to be replenished, what historically occurred in that area that is no longer. And it kind of goes on and on. And only once you've got that sorted, when you've got a hand on the poaching situation, when you've got some projects ahead to reintroduce animals, because you can't just reintroduce animals if there's severe poaching. They're just all going to get poached again. That kind of defeats the purpose. Then they'll start upskilling members from the communities, and basically the plans will start to develop lodges and to be able to reopen them to the public. But it takes a long time to even get to that point, especially the war-stricken countries that you've spoken about. But don't worry, in Africa, there is a lot going on behind the scenes. You can hear the European bee eaters chatting away. So, Lucy, you've asked, where are we now? So, I'm sorry, I'm just confused. So we are at Oldonyo, we're in Kenya. So, come on, camera, don't freeze too much now. Sorry, everybody, we've been having some difficulty with some of the AfriCam cameras. You know how it goes with technology. So Oldonyo, not a lot of people know about Oldonyo, because it hasn't been around for as long as the Amboseli or Tsavo has been around for. So it's great. It's this whole wilderness area that is situated between those two prominent parks, and has now also become a protected area. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more context on where Oldonyo basically is. And then I have another question from Doc PL. You're wondering what the differences are between the Maasai giraffe and the southern giraffe. So we're obviously looking at the Maasai giraffe at the moment. And it's the biggest thing is that the location of where they occur, where they geographically are found. That is the most important thing. So these cannot be southern giraffe unless they were introduced onto a private reserve. But that's not the case. So the Maasai giraffe occur in East Africa. The Maasai giraffe are slightly taller. They're the tallest of the species of giraffe in comparison to the southern giraffe. But the southern giraffe is not much shorter. So you'll look at males being, for the Maasai giraffe, just over 5.5 meters, so about 18 foot tall. And then you'll find that the southern giraffe, a fully grown male, will just be on the lower end of that scale. So there's not too much difference. And then something else that you can look at is the interesting patterns that the Maasai giraffe have. But again, I've sometimes seen, whoops, there they go. I don't know what scared them again. It's probably just people who are moving around. But with giraffe having such interesting patterns, sometimes I'll see southern giraffe that almost look like they should be Maasai giraffe. So you could probably have if you Google a couple of images, you'll see that the patterns on the Maasai giraffe remind me of like a maple leaf, if you will. But that's not the case all the time. But again, distribution is going to be the most important. And yeah, there's a great website that I often refer to. It's called giraffeconservation.org. If you type that in, you'll be able to find it, and they've got quite a bit of relevant information. And Robert Cole, you said that giraffe are so majestic. They absolutely are. Prairie Dog, you've said that you're having a great time. Well, that makes me really happy. It's always good to have, like, guests on shows, have different types of conversations, and hear varying opinions. Even the giraffe seems to be agreeing with us today. Munching away. Oh, this is great because you might be able to see that bolus come straight up the esophagus. Watch carefully between the two oxpeckers. There we go. Did you see that? That's such an amazing thing to see. And I suppose most safari guides point it out to their guests. If you're fortunate enough to have a close sighting of a giraffe, and to be fair, I don't think I've ever had a view like this of a giraffe when I've been on safari, except that one time when I was in a tree. But I told that story, I think it was last week or the week before, so I won't be telling it again. But it is so great to see, and it's nice that we've got the cameras to zoom in, and we can see it all the time. Della, you said yesterday there was a light white giraffe, and you asked if it could be leucistic, and how common is it in giraffe? It's very difficult to say if it was leucistic or not. So I have seen some very pale colored giraffe before, but they were not leucistic. In fact, in the Eastern Cape, and I'm just trying to think, it wasn't at Amakhala, it was at Kariga. I noticed that the giraffe that they had were, 10 shades lighter than the giraffe that I typically see up here in the Lowveld, so in the greater Kruger areas. And that might just be from a population of giraffe that's the coloration that is kind of being passed on. So it's a bit difficult to tell. With leucism, you will still see the patterns. But what I don't know if you noticed, if the eyelashes or tail hair of that giraffe were pale or were they dark? Because normally they'll be a much lighter color, and then they'll also almost have like a bluish tinge, not bright blue or anything like that. That could typically be leucism. But if those tail hairs and the eyelashes weren't necessarily white, then I'd be reluctant to say that it was leucistic, and that it probably was just an individual that had a much lighter coloration. And if it was albino Della, then it would be completely white. You wouldn't see any of the patterns at all. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was a couple of years ago, maybe fairly recent, in Ruaha National Park. I'm pretty sure it was Ruaha, or maybe it was somewhere in Kenya, I forget now. But there was a albino giraffe moving around. And then also in one of those parks, there was an albino fully grown buffalo bull, which is quite spectacular because you don't very often see a fully grown albino individual animals in Africa. I mean, you can imagine, for a number of different reasons. Oh, I'm absolutely loving this entanglement of the giraffe. It was another opportunity to take a great screenshot. This would definitely look wonderful on as your desktop wallpaper. And then Lucy, you've asked, what is the life expectancy of a giraffe? Goodness, it obviously varies, right, depending on a number of different things. But for the most part, I'd say not much older than 25 years old. Of course, they could potentially get older. You might find individuals that are kept in captivity will probably live much longer than that, probably closer to the age of about 30 or so. I'm also keeping my eyes out to see if there are any other interesting birds that we can have a look at. But for now, there's a rather large, maybe a mourning dove that's gone down there that looks rather big. Maybe not a mourning dove, maybe a red-eye dove. You can hear the oxpeckers, that sort of drilling sound occasionally. Now this is my favorite part, is watching these big clouds. You see how they look like they're exploding vertically. Come on, give us a big thunderstorm. I am really grateful for the influx of giraffe today, as most of the cameras are particularly quiet. And I believe we have a couple of clips that have happened recently. So some non-live clips that are always really interesting to see. And there's one that particularly caught my interest, so I'd like to watch it. It involves a leopard and something that gives it a surprise. So here we go. We are at Rosie's Pan, one of my favorite birding spots. But this is probably the Rosie's Pan female. We actually watched a clip of her yesterday. Whoopsie! That was a big hop, skip, and a jump away from the waterhole. Such a big fright that it's enough to turn her away. Now, I wonder what that was. We'll see. I think let's watch the clip again. From when we'll see what happens. Maybe she goes back to drink. Otherwise, we will start it and see what it could have been. I think it was something in the water. But she's quite nervous now. You can see walking around, kind of also confused by the situation. Okay, let's watch that clip again. I just want to have a look at the first part of it. I don't think we're able to slow it down. Watch there. Let's see. Having a drink, no problem. And then I did see a big splash. I think it was on the left. There it is. Whoops. Ah, fascinating. That's awesome. So it could have been a number of different things. It has been suggested that it was a catfish, which would make sense. They are very active creatures, and there will be plenty of them, I have no doubt, in Rosie's Pan. So yeah, it could have been that. It could have been a terrapin. It was a bit difficult to see, but it looked like something gulped at the surface and then kind of swam away. So more than likely not a big catfish. I just love that. Gave her such a fright that she's just like, no, I'm actually done. I don't need to drink. I'll go and find water somewhere else. So if you're wondering why this is shot in black and white, this was filmed in the evening with an infrared light. Most of the cameras have got infrared lights. Now we are back in Kenya. Now you can start to see the rain falling in the distance. And it's crazy how in just a couple of minutes the sky has completely changed. You can see the clouds that are reaching out towards us. They're starting to get more and more dense. You can see how the bottom of the clouds is becoming that sort of dark grey color in no time. And I'm sure the humidity is rising like you cannot believe. The clouds will burst. It'll be interesting to see, because I don't think that they're pumping this water hole at the moment. I think there's enough rain around to keep it topped up. What it will look like tomorrow. Will it be filled to the brim? As it has been for the last few days. Well, we'll just wait for a little bit. Maybe some more giraffe come through, seeing as though there's plenty of giraffe questions. Or maybe we'll see an interesting bird. No giraffe coming in to drink. So we're going to head over and check out some elephants. Yay! The Olifants River camera is back up and running. There are three elephants. Splashing about in the water. This sounds like some bee eaters in the background. I absolutely love this camera, but for some bizarre reason, my head does not like the island in the center because it's obviously uneven. Anybody else's OCD freaking them out, making it seem like the camera is not straight? I have no idea now if it is or not. But anyways, I'd like to explore this area on foot along the river's edge. Look at all these big, beautiful trees. And Doc GL, you said that this is your favorite spot. Well, it's easy to see why. I'd like to climb up into one of these tall trees and just spend the day there, observing and listening to every bird and animal. Hi, Deborah. I see you've also just joined us today, and cheetahs and other animals. And cheetahs and other animals, you said that this is elephantastic. Yep, that's a great way to describe the scene. It's very peaceful with the elephants feeding on that embankment. And this is so typical that you see, obviously you can see it in South Africa, where there are big river systems, where animals will cross the river and head out onto these exposed islands where the vegetation is largely untouched by lots of different animals. But you could have buffalo swimming over. I mean, we see the giraffe crossing here quite often too. And then the ones that, cross the easiest are the elephants. And you can see how lovely and lush that grass is. And during the drier seasons, an island like this will become a favorite. But there are many islands on the Olifants River. You even hear some voices traveling along the Olifants River. I'm very envious of those people that are around. Most of the elephants moving back. It looks like there's some bee eaters. I don't know if you saw one just kind of in the center of the screen where the overhanging branches are. I mean, it looked like it swooped down and went and sat back up on the branch. In fact, it looks like there might be 2 or 3 of them. I think it's the bee eaters again. And Doc GL, you said, did I see that elephant dive into the wet bank of grass? Yes, absolutely. They have so much fun. I mean, have you ever seen it where, maybe your dog hasn't seen grass for a while or something like that, when they get those zoomies and they're just so happy? I imagine it must be the equivalent. Elephants and most animals definitely do things just for fun because they feel good. And I bet it must be nice and cool. Or perhaps it made a mistake and thought it was plunging into the water. Not going to make it onto the Olympic diving squad, behaving like that. And then Moonbeam Smith, you said it's not every single day you see a pop-up elephant. No, you're right. My favorite is when they're crossing big river systems that are deep to the point where they cannot stand. And you watch the whole herd disappear under the water when they first enter, and then all of a sudden you see a snorkel, little trunk pop up, whoop, and then off they go, and then they swim. They're really good swimmers, elephants. And you can just see how wide the river actually is. It'll be quite low at the moment, just because we haven't had much rain. If there has been rain up in the mountains, it definitely would have topped it up. And because of the Drakensberg Mountains, the northern Drakensberg Mountains that surround this area, the higher you go, you kind of get an entire different climate up there. So quite often I look towards the northern Drakensberg Mountains for where I stay, and it looks like it's pouring with rain, and there's a big lightning storm, and it'll be sunny and hot where I am. So not looking too dry just yet, but it'll be interesting to see how the water levels change over the next couple of months with there not being much rain forecasted. Bunny, you said that I've got good eyes for seeing the bee eaters. I wish you could see how my face sometimes is glued to the screen, because I'm looking carefully, and then sometimes I even reach for my binoculars because it's just habit, and obviously I'm not going to see any better with my binoculars staring at my computer screen. Old habits die hard though. And then Jaibani, you've also just mentioned that there's a track where we see lions and leopards walk at night near the baboons. So this post that you can see just below in the left-hand corner of the screen, there's a big game path that kind of hugs the edge of the embankment, and I'm pretty sure it'll be the same on the opposite side of the river. And obviously the leopards and the lions aren't partial to swimming, especially in this area. Of course they do cross rivers and that type of thing, but if they don't have to, they won't. There are obviously other areas where there is a lot more water year round, and those big cats become quite used to living or just, I suppose, having a lot of water in their lives. We talk about like Botswana and the Kwai region. It's really good to see lions in water. Yeah, wouldn't it be nice? I also wonder how many leopards might be scattered along the Olifants River. Here we go. Now you can see the track quite nicely. You can see how well it's worn, and it's quite a wide track. Now, a leopard and a lion and even the baboons are not going to create a track that's this wide. So this is being worn away like this because of elephants, because of buffalo, and of course hippos coming out of the water at night to go search for grazing. And if you think about it, how animals walk, they typically, if we take away the thick-skinned animals, the big ones, where their feet are set much further apart, but otherwise, it's really interesting to see when you see a track that has been created by antelope and just how streamlined it actually is. And they'll all walk on the tiny track that's only a few centimeters wide. The kingfishers chatting away. You can also see some beautiful big fig trees, some sycamore figs. And the bee eaters. Chive Bunny, can you see them now? That sort of very flittering behavior is so typical of bee eaters. Of course, you can also hear them chirping. These figs are fantastic. There'll be a lot of bird life in them if they are fruiting at the moment. I'm just having a quick scan around to see if we can see anything else. But right now, nothing. I thought that we'd have some buffalo lurking about on the edge of the water. What is that move? Is it? I'm trying to see. There's something in the water, but it might just be a log. I'm just looking at the way that it's kind of swaying. It probably isn't an animal that is alive, but it's playing tricks on me. Do you see it? Oh, there we go. We've just zoomed out so you won't be able to see it now. And there's that pathway again. Late in the afternoon as well, I love putting this camera on, just in the background, and listening to the baboons shouting at one another as they get comfortable up in whichever trees they're roosting. And that's a problem. Well, it's not necessarily a problem for the baboons, but if you've got a house nearby and you have these trees that are all overhanging, and nice and big, most certainly baboons and the vervet monkeys, for an example, and of course a whole host of birds would utilize that to roost in. The mess that comes with that, whew, not worth it. Not worth the shade. And some of you might be going, oh, it's not that bad, until you have to clean up the mess every single day. And baboon feces stinks. It's a horrific smell. It's really not great. And it is a nightmare to get rid of. That actually looks like a bit of vegetation or something that's just sticking up now, sort of in the lower left-hand side. I thought it could have been something. Now I can see it a little bit clearer. Maybe it is a log. Or just some, yeah, I think it's probably a log that's there. It looks like it's swaying a little bit. Very easy to confuse these log-like creatures with crocodiles. I've done it so many times. I don't know if any of you remember, and I couldn't tell you which year it was, but it must have been maybe 2018 or before that. I was sitting at Chitwa Dam once, and I had convinced everybody that we were looking at a crocodile, not because I was playing a prank like I sometimes do, but I genuinely thought there was a crocodile. And I spoke about it for about 10 minutes until one of the viewers said, I also thought it was a croc, but it hasn't moved at all. And we know crocodiles can obviously sit and be patient and, not create any movement at all. But that one was, sitting still for a little bit too long. So I repositioned, and then I could clearly see that it was, in fact, a log. Right, all the animals have moved on, so we'll head over to Oldonyo to enjoy the last few minutes of the show. The giraffe are back. Nice. That's really awesome. I just wonder what happens. Do they just all wait in the tree line? Are they the same giraffe coming back for a drink? It's very difficult to tell. And I suppose, again, I've spoken about this before, it just blows my mind how giraffe, one of the most iconic animals in Africa, is just so understudied. That's, of course, all changing now, which is wonderful. But I would have loved to have known, like, there's this female that's got her back towards us now. She looks pregnant, and I thought I saw one that looked, with a fairly round belly earlier. It was a bit difficult to say because there could be more than one female giraffe that was pregnant. We're trying to find a spot pattern or any markings or, identifying features that we would normally do and use. Difficult on a giraffe. Because if it was missing a tail or it had lost the hair and you could pair that with a pattern of some sort, that would be great. Otherwise, it would be tricky. And the example that I use of this is, do you all remember the tall, dark and handsome giraffe that we used to see at Pridelands? There were about 3 versions of him. I'm just saying. I saw 3 different male giraffe, and every time one of them was seen, they were all told that it was the same giraffe. So that always made me chuckle. Oh, I love that splashing sound. It makes me want to jump into the swimming pool. But I probably won't. The water's a bit cold over the last few days. But sadly, we've run out of time. But thank you very much. And I look forward to tomorrow's live at the Waterhole. So don't forget to join me between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. South African time. And I'll be joined with another guest. And hopefully we'll be chatting all things water. I'll see you soon.